An indie game designed by Jonathan Blow and originally released in 2008, Braid reinvents the traditional platform genre with an added twist. That is, a rewind game mechanic that enables the character to go back in time. Wardrobe Fluent defined game mechanics as all actions the players may take as supported by the game's implemented logics and models. At this most fundamental level, rewinding time is an action that the players can press the shift key and easily perform within the game world. The duration of pressing the key corresponds to the duration of rewinding in the game. Whereas the default speed of rewind is 1 time, the player could also press the up and down buttons to change the speed like a DVD that we watch on TV or a cassette tape. This game mechanic allows the players to perform a series of previously unthinkable actions, such as reverting death and traveling back to an exact location. It then enables/forces the players to solve puzzles with it. On the 2D screen, we now have, through this game mechanic, a constructed higher dimension in which time seems to be present and manipulatable by the player. This higher dimension of time enabled by the game mechanic in turn enables my argument, which is that Braid is a critique of capitalism. To argue this, I will primarily make use of Marxist theory, drawing mainly ideas from Capital and early works. I will proceed to construct the argument from 2 aspects, one relating to the concept of estrangement and alienation with processes involving the labor-time theory of value. Meanwhile, the other will be related to the essential Marxist-based and superstructure framework. Both aspects are tied with the rewind game mechanic, weaving different threads of formal analysis together to form a comprehensive outlook of the game. According to Marx, what exclusively determines the magnitude of the value of any product is the amount of socially necessary labor time for its production. Here, the magnitude of the value of the product, put in simple terms, is the quantifiable monetary value of the product. Product is something that's manufactured, or in other words, realized through work. Socially necessary labor time, though sounds like a confusing term, simply refers to the amount of labor time required under the industry standard level of means. That is, worker A has the same machines and materials as worker B, therefore the time they input should be relatively equivalent and thus socially necessary. This initial framework maps on to what we can observe of the game. The product here for Braid is the successful rescue of the princess. Completion of each level of the game is one measurement of the completion of this task, and the winning of the game supposedly leads to realization of this product. As the product is the rescue of the princess, progression through each level to get closer to the princess is thus work. In this work, the playing worker gradually increases the time they input. This time is socially necessary, for the game requires more or less the same setup from every player, often a laptop, eyes, and fingers, which all would equally possess by the very fact of playing the game. Through the increase in the time input, the magnitude of the value of this product of the princess also increases. After each and every "I'm sorry, but the princess doesn't seem to be here," we grow more and more anticipation for her appearance and are driven by this anticipated valuable outcome to keep on playing the next level, thus inputting more time. So far, this analysis seems to be just common for all games, but the twist comes with the incorporation of the rewind game mechanic. In humans' mortal reality, death glooms as destined fate on all human beings, through which time becomes a limited resource. It is also because to every single human being, time is universally a destined limitation, that time itself becomes innately valuable and thus transferable to value in other entities. Yet, time is also the fundamental building block of life. Time is fragmented life, and therefore every exploitation of labor time indeed produces value, but it is also the externalization of life itself from human beings. It is the most fundamental form of estrangement, the primal way in which you deplete a human of their essence, the literal essence of life. On pain of death, we realize the life that's being taken out of us. It is on pain of death that we become conscious of our estranging conditions. The rewind mechanic in Braid, however, prevents its players from ever dying. In my very first instances of playing the game, I remember distinctly the fear I had of making a mistake and dying, as well as the immense sudden relief I felt when I discovered that I would not die, that I can just press a key and revert the whole process and even use it to my own advantage. As such, the rewind mechanic subverts the death with which one is supposed to have realized one's estrangement, which is the externalization of time and life from one's possession to produce the outcome of winning and saving the princess. With every rewind, we reaffirm our belief in the facade of immortality and infinite time that the game mechanic instills. Through it, we are tricked into conducting voluntary self-estrangement, which we come to realize only at the final level of the game, where we finally meet the princess but find out that what we thought were the product of our work was in fact not. It is when this production finally turns against us that we gain the perspective to acknowledge our estrangement. All the while, this estrangement has been there within the gameplay and with us this whole time, and each progression of our work only seeks to further and deepen it. By reserving the revelation of this knowledge to the final stage where the product of our work is expected to manifest itself, the game plays a jest on its players in the nature of, you spent all this time thinking you don't die and your time can be infinitely exploited as a means to produce, but the princess has been a lost cause the whole time. It presents a betrayal. The product of your work turns hostile against you, externalizing essence of your life through controlling your time even though you think you had infinite time and escape from death. In this way, the game criticizes the trap of endless exploitation of time and continued self-estrangement, which happens at times when one is under the false appearance of the depletion of the looming terrors of death or the facade of infinite time. This occurs in our capitalist reality through similar rewind mechanics such as Self-Care Saturday and Netflix and Chill. They also endow you with the feeling that you're able to revert the damage that estrangement has done to you and temporarily alleviate you from the strain of time and life, but ultimately does not and cannot put an end to your estrangement. Rather, they seek to return you to a better state, such that you can continue to be estranged and exploited without realizing. Essential to Marx's school of thought is also the framework of base and superstructure, in which the superstructure of ideology, norms, values, and rules coexist with the base of raw materials, machines, and tools. The superstructure makes sense of the base and legitimizes happenings in the base, whereas the base in turn enables ideas and discourses in the superstructure. For games, this framework of base and superstructure maps onto theories of game genres, particularly elaborating on Mark J.P. Wolf's theory of genre and the video game. The universal forms of genres are correspondent to the superstructure, the features of particular games are correspondent to the raw materials in the base, and interactivity itself is the genre identifying and thus idea forming and meaning making process that corresponds to the interaction between the base and the superstructure. Genre-wise, Braid invokes the classification of platform games, whose most famous representative is Super Mario Bros. Like members of this genre, Braid features movement through a series of levels by way of local motion of characters through settings that are all seen in side view. Defined by Wolf, platform games can also involve the avoidance of dropped or falling objects, conflict with computer-controlled characters, and often some character, object, or reward at the top of the climb, which provides narrative motivation. At first glance, Braid meets all these requirements for the genre. Moreover, its novel game mechanic of rewinding seems to add a new way of locomotion, such that there is innovation within the genre. However, employing the base and superstructure framework, we would see that Braid can intentionally be an ironical adaptation of the platform game genre. This comes in when we see the character narrative motivation of the game, getting to and saving the princess, as explicitly a construct demanded by the already laid out norms and rules of the platform game superstructure. That is, we see elements in the base of this particular game corresponding to the platform game genre, including how the avatar moves, how each level offers rewards, etc. And we instantly ascribe the norms of the genre to it, letting the superstructural norms decide what we make of the game. By ascribing to the game a seemingly fitting superstructure, we naturally think that we play the game to save the princess. Despite repeated hints from the little dinosaur, which seems very confused as to where the princess is, as well as the flags that tell us to cease playing. In this process, our interactivity with the game base immediately echoes our ideas, which in turn shapes how we interact with the game and perceive the game base. In this scheme, the novel rewind mechanic of the game is as a novel technology that's under research and development in the material base. Believing that the superstructural norms are wholly applicable, we believe that we need to get to the princess, and we treat the new mechanic as merely a means to maximize the possibility of reaching our princess. In our interactions with the game, we thus research and develop it to perform new hacks and win each level. This sets up for the epic final, where it is revealed that the mechanic we've been developing and relying on, in fact, blinds us toward a great deception. Like frequently with new technologies, the rewind mechanic is a double-edged sword that gets us closer to our objective but also drives us away from it. One such prominent example is self-driving cars, which started off as good intents to eliminate traffic tragedies, but it results in new forms of them rather than eliminate them, which also nonetheless is driven by the capitalist material goal of capital accumulation, as projects are spearheaded by corporations with clear money-making objectives in mind. Braid, therefore, is an irony of the base and superstructure framework by presenting us an analogy to our reality in which the superstructural that our interactivity immediately resorts to blinds us towards the ethics of what's happening in the base, which so often happens in our capitalist society too, where legitimization by superstructure occurs to cover up faults in the base. From these two aspects, I argue that Braid is a critique of capitalism. Through understanding this argument, understanding of the background of the game can also be deepened as it relates to nuclear bombs and arms race, which both closely tie with this critique of capitalism, especially in aspect of base and superstructure. As such, we also understand how the game mechanic works to provoke interpretations better. Moreover, this analysis shows us that there are still many potentials to formal analysis of games through the Marxist framework, enabling critical view of everything from games to culture and society.